Thank you, Pete. And I want to first of all thank Dr. Megan Clayton for inviting me to be a guest speaker today at her Generation Next uh, webinar, kind of our turn to ranch. I feel very honored for that. And to give everybody a little background about myself before I get started, I am the Wilson County Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent here in Wilson County, Floresville, talking to y'all from the basement of our county courthouse here in Floresville. Want to let everybody know they're ever in the area, please feel welcome to come in here and visit us and give us a little face-to-face chat as well. But myself, me and my wife and two boys, I have Sutton and Sawyer, been married for myself for 25 plus years. We run a cow-calf operation. We have a small commercial operation, family operation. We also put up some hay. It seems like a lot of times I'm a full-time county agent, more of a full-time father, and then a full-time uh, producer of kind of a grass forage and beef operation. So anything I can do to find easier or quicker type decision aids, that's where we've kind of jump off and go with. And with that, I started, uh, like a lot of my colleagues, using smartphones back uh, 18, 20 years ago. And then as the apps started developing, started using different their smartphones for this kind of operations just to make things a little bit easier. And then actually about 5 or 6 years ago, started doing some presentations and then working with other producers on this. And that's where it's kind of led me to, uh, I guess, being asked to do some of these agriculture applications with our education nowadays. It's funny, kind of. I remember opening up my first iPhone and looking at the instruction or not instruction booklet there, and a lot of the stuff that we learn nowadays is more face to face, one on one, showing a producer or showing a colleague an app that I've just found. And so throughout this next 45 minutes to hour that we're talking, um, you might have certain apps that I have not discovered. And with over 2 million apps in the App Store there, or uh, Google Play, there are a lot of apps being developed all the time, and so please share them with myself as well as other colleagues from that standpoint. But as we get started here, I'm going to be like a lot of university individuals as well as agriculturalists and extension agents. I'm going to throw up a disclaimer that we're going to have a list that's been compiled of resources of apps that I use. And these are apps that I find useful for producers, for myself in agriculture use, but the functionality, a lot of it will depend, and the intended use for that, some of it is research. So with anything on the internet, you need to look at where it came from, and from that, before downloading it, know what the actually person that developed that, what their intended list is. And many of the apps referenced in the publications and the presentation that I'm about to do uh, are available in web-based formats, and we'll talk more about that. And it could be in several different places where you find those apps being listed. As I start off my presentation, I think it's best to kind of show the different types of operating systems. I talk a lot of times with our producers saying this is kind of like the Ford or the Chevrolet, and doesn't say that one brand's above the other, even though that the developers of them will say that ours is better, just kind of like that Ford truck is better than that Chevrolet truck, or Chevy is better. Um, it depends on which operating system you go into. For me, I've kind of started with the iPhone and stuck with it over the years. And my darling wife, she started as a Android user and really enjoyed that. And then in more recent years has kind of switched over to the iPhone. And we see that, not saying that one is better or worse than the other. It seems like when one kind of develops maybe a nicer screen or a better operating platform or some improvements, it seems like the other one model picks it up within time. And if you look at those iPhones, going from versions 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the 10, the X, and with the iPhones, that has been kind of a great platform where you use that iOS operating systems. On the Androids as well, there's a lot of different uh, versions of that, and as we've seen more recently, getting P and Q coming out before long. Uh, it just kind of depends on which one that you like to use. And when we start talking about the apps, there are certain apps that work on one or both of the operating systems, as well as maybe look better and work better on those iPads or tablets. And depending on which method that you're using, I mean, some of y'all today might be sitting there and watching this seminar on an iPad and or a tablet and have different options there or different type of apps to work off those. But as we start talking about the two different types of phones or tablets, one's going to kind of tie back into a lot of y'all probably know about the Apple Store or the iTunes Store, and that's where you download yours, or Android, Google Play. Windows has a place to also download apps, but it kind of gets down to what is the uh, tool that you're actually using to communicate and download to see. So as we get into some basic information, I feel like you kind of need to start. What is an app? I think if you're tuned into here, everybody understands that it is an application for smartphones and tablets. It is designed to provide some easy access. I've tell a lot of our producers that we are looking at the new Black Book and #2 pencil. For my grandfather, he always said, have a pencil, and the ink pen was made by the devil because you write ink on paper and it gets wet and it'd run off. I'd always wonder what he would think if he saw the cattle information I keep on my iPhone and trusting that it's backed up there on the iCloud so that I can pull it back off whenever that gets dropped or gets thrown in some water as well. With a lot of our apps, I think that, as I started off at the very beginning talking about, is knowing where you're going to gain your information. A lot of times in whatever our daily lives are, we are reading. We get up in the morning, we start reading the paper, or we're turning on the TV, or we're looking at our phones for sources, and different individuals might tune into that ABC News, Fox News, CNN. Everybody has where they go to get source, or where they know the best source of information comes, and these apps are no different. So know that some of the apps are made by universities, by different companies, and apps out there are made by individuals. So I feel like you need to know, when you start downloading these apps, know who makes them. Is it an individual, as well as where are they getting their source of uh, information that they might put on there? And is it a reputable source? Also on apps, I think it's key also knowing, and I see this from time to time, how much data is that app using on your phone? Some of these apps, they're very complicated. Uh, it can pull a lot of data. And if you're out there, as Pete said, underneath that windmill, are you going to be able to have a good signal strength? or if you're tied into a uh, maybe hooked up to the internet or streaming, do you have enough data that you're going to be able to run that video? Uh, so you need to be able to look at that, and when you download those apps, know how much data would you be using. I think a key thing, and my youngest son Sawyer, he likes to do games on his apps, and if you look at the sheer numbers and you look at statistics, 25% of the downloaded apps today are all about gaming, and they can drain a lot of battery life. And then when you're not using that app, if that app is still open and running in the background, how much of that battery life is it draining off those phones? And so I always try to explain this to producers whenever I'm doing this presentation is just because you start that app on mapping and getting from city to city, just because you're not looking at it, does that mean that that app's still running in the background? And you need to be able to sit there and maybe if you're done using it, swipe it off and get that app shut down so that it's not draining that battery life. And as we see more and more in the conversations I have a lot of times with my producers and other individuals are, what is the difference in the free and the paid apps? A lot of these apps, they that are free, you have to deal with, and you'll see on some of the screenshots that I'll be presenting later on. I tie into a lot of free apps, but it comes with watching your screen fill up with advertisements. It might use more data because it has a scrolling bar showing different advertisements where if you buy in or do a paid version, you don't have that. The ads popping up there. And then a lot of times with producers, sometimes, and we get into this, I said, you might get a app where provides a lot of information and the cost is 99 cents. I know I see that a lot of times with some of the apps that we, and I say we, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension have for sale, and it's 99 cents. My morning coffee today was $2.09 itself for that hour of, for me, enjoyment of that black liquid. But I think if you have to know that just because it starts off free, that it might go ahead and over a period of time, it could turn into a paid version. We have apps out there all the time that you might be free the first 15 to 30 days and then be paid. Or after several versions go up, then all of a sudden, the next time you turn that app on, you see that to keep the benefit of that app, you have to pay. Now I'm going to go ahead and kind of get into some of the different apps. Like I said, this is I'm hitting a short list of apps that are out there, and these are apps that I find in our area and through visiting with producers and that work extremely well, and that as we go through them, you might see some, and if you see that there's some other ones, put it in that chat box. Go ahead and add that. And at the end, I have given Pete a list of some of the apps I'll be showing you, and be sharing some of these apps that we're talking about. But with our apps, I think a lot of people don't also think of one of the basic apps they have on their phone is that camera function. We take a lot of pictures. It's amazing at how many times, even last night at a restaurant, my wife was just happy with her fried cabbage that she had from the restaurant. So she had to take a picture of it and send it to her mother. And a lot of times I don't think individuals really realize that even that tool of taking a picture of a plant, an animal, a fungus, or a disease and sending it to a specialist or sending it to somebody that has a knowledge and background, sometimes the functions of that functionality of a phone is one that's just mistaken or not used to its fullest. As we start talking about some of the apps, I always like to, because here in agriculture, talk about weather. Pete started off by asking me how much rain we had, and sure enough, we hadn't had any rain. But the next thing I know, I reached down and I checked my radar app, and some people turn over there to Weather Underground or the Weather Channel. Uh, Excellent apps that are there. Uh, some of the apps that I show up here, Wind Finder app or Ladybug app. A lot of apps that are out there are free, or they're tied into maybe your local news station that has apps that tie into that weather, and then also can give you, if severe weather's around, that you can get instant updates on that weather. And so I feel like in our industry, this is something that everybody should have on their phone, is some type of a weather app and tied into it. Other apps that we find useful are scouting apps, be it for insects or disease. Uh, the apps, and as we get into apps, one that we'll talk about is that ID Weeds out of University of Missouri. That's an app that I really enjoy, and it's gone through several different versions. And we talk about apps and keeping updated. I think it's key to understand, and if you've been using apps for a very long time as a just a steward of the land, or somebody using smartphones, all of a sudden you might have a certain app that you like, and then next thing you know, you hit on that button and it comes up and it says uh, not available or not updated to the newest version. And so there's been, I know one is a soils app that I really like, that you could stand in a certain location and look at the local soil that was underneath you. And it went back to the uh, NRCS soil surveys. And that's one that has not been updated to current times. So other companies out there are using different apps to fulfill that need, but we need to also, like I said, look at where that is, and know that just because that app is there, that it might not be available all the times. But in these apps, I think a key thing is being able to use weed IDs, being able to know that there are apps out there like the Compendium of Veterinary Medicine or Merck manual that kind of help with a lot of the needs that could be uh, upcoming as we kind of progress in this Plant ID apps. There's the Leaf Snap ID, more of a photo library. Aqua Plants is one, or Aquaside through A&M AgriLife, that will take you through a progression of plants and plant IDs. And with this, we'll go through some of these apps. But then know, like with the Brit app, that it is not going to be one that you're going to download on a Apple iPhone. That was a app that they developed for an Android type phone. And so know that just because the app's nice, and this app right now, if you want to go to Amazon, you could download it, but you're not going to find it at the iTunes store. And with that being said, there are some of these apps that you don't find at either those two locations. Some of these apps I've noticed that you have to go to maybe a website and download it off of a website per se, instead of just off of the Apple store. Spray mixes. This is another kind of ease or tool that I really enjoy, that for spray tank mixes. I know for a lot of our producers here in this area, I'm constantly getting calls about mixing guides or calibrations. I feel like Clemson's done a really good job on this side. They have two apps that a lot of our specialists and myself use. One is more of a calibration guide, and then another one's a mixing guide to help with that. And uh, they they have those available. If you look at the Noble Foundation website, they have some of the different tools within their apps as well. Private industry, if I know for me, I personally have a boom sprayer that we run the T-Jet nozzles. So I've downloaded that T-Jet nozzle website or app that goes back, and if I need to adjust my nozzles on that boom sprayer, I can sit there and look at what pressures I need to run as well. And so sometimes that ease a lot of that math, where I know me as an individual, not really great with math per se. Well, this kind of speeds that process up and helps in doing that mathematics. More and more as I visit with producers, this is probably the app that gets them most excited, and that's where they can start doing mapping and record keeping, maybe doing field records or spray records, being able to save it out in the field to send to themselves, or if they're wanting to measure a field or measure a distance. And so there's several out there that do this, and giving more talks. It seems like I'm constantly trying different ones that a producer will sit there and say, "Hey, Bryan, look at this app I saw for measuring this field." And with a lot of us, I think nowadays we'll do that. We'll download an app. We might keep it on the phone for 2 or 3 weeks, try it out, and if it's something that seems to be easier or quicker or have a different functionality that we find useful, then we'll hang on to it. It's amazing at reading some of the different statistics. Most phone users will have 80 different apps on their phone. So, and of that, 40 of those apps that we'll use every month. Now, I might go 4 or 5 months without using a certain app, but then go back and pull it up. If I'm on a trip, use a Gas Buddy app to see where the closest gas station with the cheapest prices are. So sometimes I might go 4 or 5 months without using that, but I get out on the road and use it. So a lot of times we have maps out there for record keeping as well as for measurement, and we'll show a couple of these. I think other apps that work for our production in agriculture is the wildlife apps. These have really been gaining popularity in the last couple of years, is being able to use apps to look more towards management of certain times a year, help with maybe aging of deer, or being able to do that maybe wildlife damage type control, knowing that understanding, and then other tools on crop production, being able to look at fertilizer uh, uh, management, nutrient management. The Ag PhD that has multiple versions that help a lot on the crop production side and can take you several different places at one time. As we've kind of been talking for the last 20 minutes, I want to do some show and tell. For those that have never met me, I'm kind of the guy down there in the yellow raincoat showing that picture today, since there is rain in our area, and this is a talk I was given a couple of years ago about knowing your forage and knowing the forage availability for livestock production. But with this, as we go on, one of the first apps I started talking about, weather apps, is that Wind Finder app. I really enjoy this app, and like most weather ones, you can see what's around you, and some unique features that I like about this app. where one of my properties are is about 2 miles from Randolph Air Force Base. So this app lets me look at weather stations around the area, and then I can save them into my favorites. If you look at the bottom of this app or this screenshot, and this is 2 screenshots that, and I'm going to pull out a green arrow here. Down here at the bottom, we have James Avery uh, advertisement, and that James Avery advertisement right there shows that if I wanted to go ahead and pay for the paid version of this, then I can get rid of that. But staying free, I'm gonna have that pop up. But with this app, I've done favorites. Calaveras Lake is the closest one to my office. That's the second one showing there. And as I hit on that Calaveras Lake, that app will show me the current wind speed, what it is, if it's maxing out, and the temperature. But when you look at that second screenshot, you can see where is that weather station actually located. It gives us a sunrise, sunset, local time with that, which that part is extremely nice from that app. But other parts of this app that I really enjoy is when you click on that location of that, you get for the next 5 days on every 3 hours, you get an estimate of what the prediction of wind speed will be, wind direction, the max, the temperature, as well as also looking at possibilities of rain or sun, partly cloudy. If it's a weather station down around the coast, you can also get the tides. My wife's is an avid fisherwoman, and she likes going down the coast, and so I'll pull up sometimes the Corpus Christi area, pull up that coastal, and look at what the tides are, and to see kind of how those winds are playing on those tides coming in and out. I really like this. Like I said, I'm a full-time county agent, and so I might be trying to plan to do some spraying, let's say Saturday morning. I can go to this app. I can scroll down this screen and pull up that arrow again, as I can just kind of scroll to the bottom, and it keeps going to all the way out for 5 days. If you scroll over to the side, other option is, and looking at this screen right here, the second screen, you can see the wind, the direction of the wind, how it's blowing, and then also the wind speed. I really appreciate this. If I'm looking at it from this last weekend, me and my sons, we got out and we were burning brush. And what I wanted to see is I pulled up this app and started looking at this wind speed, because I was worried I knew the winds were going to be picking up later in the day, and where were those winds, how heavy were they, and the changing. If you look at on that slide or on that screenshot, the different color represents the different speeds of that. You can also look at the arrows of that wind direction. The longer the arrow, the higher the winds. The shorter the arrow, the shorter the wind. So real quick snapshot. And then if you also look down here at the bottom of the screen, you can take that out for several days, looking at the change of the wind speed, the wind direction of what it's going to get you. A very useful app. A lot of my producers here in the area find it very useful. A lot of it goes back to what local radars you have around you. I have last January spent some time out in Paradise, California, helping the residents there, and so I pulled up Chico weather station there. Really helped as we're sitting there helping a community in need, and knowing what the weather, how that was going to change and affect how we're able to help those individuals. Another app that I find very useful, and we'll show this app. This is the Arcgis app. This is the app, whenever it downloads, icon that will come up on your screen. This is kind of a second version. It was funny. Dr. Clayton called me several years ago. She said, Bryan, she goes, we had talked about this Arcgis app, and it's no longer useful. It's gone. And I was like, well, actually, the developers of it changed, and it went to a totally different logo. That instead of updating that, it just seemed like what they did is they left that whole platform, redesigned a whole different platform, and it came out. Now, this one can be a little more challenging than others. There's one that I also have, which is a GIS area measure that's more basic for a lot of my producers. Really quick, want to know maybe a distance of a field or the area, and they'll go to that one. What I like about this one, and I keep coming back to it, is it has a lot of functionality, and we'll talk more on that. But when you open up this screen, normally it will pop up a dot that will show where you're located at. This actually is one of the fields here next to my office, is a center pivot or three-quarter pivot that we have operating in the area. And I had a producer one time came to me, and he was sitting there and go, can we get the distance on this real quick in feet? And so I was able to show him where you can pull this up, and it shows the most current aerial image, and then drop these 2 points with my finger down here at the bottom. It gives you measure the distance, or you can click on this other icon here that would measure the area, but it pops up and shows you the distance from your 2 points there across that field. And however close you want to scroll down to it to get as accurate as you would like. With these capabilities, this is a screenshot that I did where I showed going around that pivot to know how many acres were directly underneath that pivot, so that we'd know how much seed to order in that area. And so if you, by a click of a button, can sit there and change it from as you go around, you can move it from acres, and this shows that in that area that was 90.48 acres, or you can take it to the square feet or hectares as well, just by clicking on one of these areas. A very useful tool, like I said, takes a little bit more work, because every place you see one of those squares right there is where I scroll down and actually hit that with my finger as well. And so one of the useful tools that I like about the ArcGIS Explorer is I can sit there and then also go back over to the writing icon, and that's where I clicked on this, and then be able to measure around, put field 1, and that's what I just did with my finger real quickly, and then screenshot that and send it to the producer. And so he actually had that for his records. You also can measure, like for me, this is a actual measurement from the center of that pivot to the to my office, 2.33 miles. So when we're sitting there using record keeping, also one of the other advantages to this app is you have a lot of imagery, base map imagery that you can pull up to use on that app, where some of the other more basic mapping platforms out there don't have that. Like I said, one that I really appreciate there. Of course, Dr. Megan Clayton worked with a developer on this one. Another app that I really enjoy, the cow poop analyzer. I kid with my producers who says A&M don't fully understand their feces, and truly appreciate this, because working with a lot of our producers, what they need to know and what we try to show them is that if you look at this feces or the cow pie here, actually it corresponds with how much protein, and this will give you the amount of protein that cow has been consuming, as well as the range of digestibility. You can import this into a herd and then show that on a certain date or time that you had, and this is one of the ones that I actually took a picture of a cow pie out there in the pasture that had been flattened and everything, and then give a baseline point to that pasture, what those animals had, and be able to show this over a progression of time. And this actually goes back to one of the publications that we have with Texas AgriLife Extension that Dr. Bob Lyons and Dr. Rick Machen did, where they looked at cow pies and followed the progression from low to high protein. Kind of a very standalone basic app that developed early on, but one that works a lot with producers when they want to see about their consumption, what protein that those animals have available to them out there in the pasture. Another app that I find a lot of use for that my producers, and what we're seeing more and more, where like Dr. Clayton's app pretty much just worked off of the feces score and protein. More and more we're seeing a lot of the apps that encompass several different performance options. This app right here works along that same lines from Mississippi State University and Extension, where when you click on the app, it pulls up the first screen that you'll have pop up is over here, and it gives you an option of, do you want reproductive, performance, or management, and what is your need. And so if you're looking for help on reproductive, okay, they can go in there and give you several different calculators for looking at calving length, gestation. If you look at your performance, this screen will pop up and show adjusted birth weight. It can give you adjusted weaning weight. You put in the days, average daily gain of your livestock. If you know, it figures average daily gain. For me, one that we use quite a bit, this management option. A lot of my producers, they like this, and they like this app because from that management option, they'll go in here and they can look at dosage. It might you might say give 1 milliliter for every 24 pounds of animal, and you got a 1,400-pound animal. This will figure up how many exact milliliters to give. A lot of my producers also look at this stock trailer stock density, and with new small acreage landowners that we have here in the area, they're looking at that, and what they want to know is how many cattle can they load up there. I work cattle out west a lot of times, and I'm amazed at a producer will sit there and go, well, heck, we've always gotten 30 head on this trailer, and cattle get bigger and bigger, and it can be a problem. Well, what I like about this app right here, and it will take a producer through there showing that the screen is if your trailer, and you can move this button back and forth to a 14-foot or all the way up to 30-foot in length, and then also the width of the trailer from 6 to 7 foot. For me, I've put in here, and currently I have a 20-foot by 7-foot trailer, and the other day I was selling some 600 weight cattle, and if you hit calculate, it'll tell you approximately how many head that you can put on that trailer. And I get a lot of producers that really appreciate this app just from that standpoint. Now, and it says that density for cattle with horns, that you need to kind of ease off of it, but at least it gives them a starting point to know about how many loads of cattle do we have if we're sitting out there with 40 or 50 head. And that kind of gives them a helping point with that. Another one of the apps that I kind of wanted to show everybody with that. On our Weed IDs and Weed ID app, this is a really good one from University of Missouri. This app has changed over the years, and really appreciate this app because they keep updating it, making it very user friendly. And I think that's a lot of times what we need is very user friendly apps. Those are the ones that people keep going back to. And this one will give you the option to look at weeds by features. You can search it by the name if you happen to know the name, or you feel like you think you know what the name is, or it'll give you a full list. But a lot of times I'm actually going through this process where I look and go, okay, are we talking broadleaf weed or grassy weed? And so if it's a broadleaf, which we have a lot of right now, we'll select that, and then you go to our second options, and you work down through a list of options, and it gives you about 8 to 12 options that you work down. We can't show them all on this, but as you work down, it will get you down to a list of maybe 2, 3, or 6 weeds for your that give you a chance to be able to look at an image. You can scroll through an image of like one of 4 right here, and it talks about that plant. The annual sow thistle is what we kind of pulled into with this one. So this is one of those weed IDs that seems to work. This is one that works for me. Other ones, that BASF app, some of my producers, they like that one better. It just kind of depends on how you look and search for information. Another app I really appreciate, the Compendium of Veterinary Medicine, one that I share a lot with my producers, that kind of talks about the different products there. And then with this app, it has a list of all the medications there. You can scroll through or search those medications. If you put in up here in the search window, that right up here at the top, I've done that, and we pulled up the 2020, and it's right here where it's 2020 Vision, a product that we use quite a bit for our cattle, for our calves here with black leg shot. Kind of that's the main use with it. It gives you the species that you give it, the route of administration be subcutaneously, and then also the dose. And so if that's something that you have, because it's been in maybe a refrigerator or gotten wet and you cannot see that, this gives that information really easy. And then when it needs to be repeated, how many days, and then the withdrawal times that you have for meat within that area. What I also appreciate, if you forget or you lose that label there, it can go through and you can get a full label of that product right here, and it has that label, the antidotes, all the usage of it from that standpoint. You can also go through even with the withdrawal time chart for all your different species and all your different products, just for depending on the route administration, how many days for milk or meat on that kind of an app. Aquaside app is one that I just used the other day at a pond. I have a lot of producers that they're always wanting to know aquatic weeds. This is a screenshot on the outside, but this breaks down the weeds to an algae, floating plant, a submerged plant underneath the water, or is it an emerging plant coming out of it? And so with this app, and this is one of those apps that you have to pay for, whenever you go through there, and like with this part, we clicked on algae. It comes up with pictures of the different algae. It talks about that. It gives you a picture, a blowed up picture of it, how to control it. And then if you're using maybe copper, it will give you the restrictions for human use, livestock, irrigation, or other comments from that. A very useful app if you have ponds in your area, one that our wildlife fisheries specialists that do real well. Another app out of Nebraska that I like real well This goes back to those producers that are keeping records, spray records, gives you kind of a history, and this will go through. You can put your location and the date. You can actually have these emailed to yourself for your records so that you can keep and go back and review. It keeps track of also your products there. With this one in this screenshot off to the far right, graze on next, 2 pints to the acre, the amount, and then you have your registration number. And so you can keep all that for your spray records, kind of the plant height. And so it gives you a lot of different options here. This is just one here in Texas. If you're pretty familiar, you don't have to have it. You don't have to have your spray records on a TDA form. You can have it on these kind of forms as long as you have all the information required. Took a quick drink. Another app that we have that I appreciate from Wildlife Fisheries is a management app where you come in and you can select the month that you have operations for bobwhite quail, and then it breaks out to what needs to be done in those months, be it brush sculpting, predator control, maybe grazing management, and then it walks through and shows you different sheets or fact sheets, and you can pull up fact sheets for what you're doing at that time. Noble Foundation, if y'all not familiar with the Noble Foundation app, a great app that has literally a dozen and a half different kind of calculators. It goes back to one of those apps that has a multi-functioning area. This app kind of shows you where if you're wanting to change body condition score on cattle, it gives you how long it takes. It can do the breeding season like the Mississippi State one. Frame score calculator, Lime, if you're a lot of the different pond stocking calculators. This does a lot of the math for you. If you look at the frame score one, it talks about an age of a bull and the hip height. So it gives you a frame score for that animal, as well as mature weight in there. This is the Lime calculator, other screenshot. Noble Foundation's done a great job in putting together a lot of the need of a calculator into one option. The last app I'd like to talk about is news media. One that I get from a lot of people is, where were you getting your ag news? I think the Ag Web News for me is one that's been really well received. Another app that I can pull up, and for me, it has weather information. It does have planting information. From time to time, the crop comments in the area are great to see what other producers are going through at that time. And then being able to pull up the market and be able to look just quickly at a grain or livestock market, Arcgis. They have it, their center there that has worked well. This is one app. There are several apps out there when it comes to market and where the market currently is. What I like is this kind of gives me the news, some weather outlook in the markets all in one location for an easy app. Today is just, I've gone through a quick shot of several apps here. We hit about a half a dozen that I showed you with. A&M, AgriLife, we currently are working on a lot of different releases throughout all the different departments through Ag Eco, Wildlife and Fisheries, as you see. And then there's a lot of apps out there that y'all probably are already using from other universities that could add to the list. And please let us know what works for y'all. Know that just because these apps are there today, don't mean that they're going to be updated for the phones in the future. So I would also tell you, be constantly looking out there. And I know all the time I have producers as well as specialists asking, hey, what app do you see for on the wildlife side? and about the time I think that there's that the list is complete, then there's something new there and everything. Kind of with that, Pete, I'm kind of wrapping up. And do we have a little bit of time for questions?
Yes, sir. We have some questions. I see James posted something. Maybe you're familiar with that app. You see that question? The Venza PDF
Yes.
allows ARGIS shapefiles from NRCS to be uploaded. I guess he was commenting on your app.
Yeah. And and with on some of these apps like the ArcGIS, there are free and paid versions, and I don't know if you have to have a and James might know if that has to be the paid version or if also it works on the free version as well. Uh, but that's what I enjoy about those apps is a lot of them they have multi uses and functionalities about them. It looks like James offers 3 free uploads. Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? Y'all feel free to type them down at the bottom. If you're not doing so, you can follow us on Facebook under facebook.com/txrange, and we normally post 2 educational posts a week, some about grasses, soil temperature, chemicals, what have you. So y'all follow us there. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and pop out a web link uh, for a survey, and please answer the survey. If by any chance it covered up your screen and can't see it, this is a link that you can actually click on survey. And our next session is going to be on June the 6th. The speaker is going to be David Anderson. And I put range lines up there as a title, but I don't know what the title is going to be. But